Welcome to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path.
Jason, welcome back to another beautiful morning here. I really enjoyed this one consultant's perspective.
Yeah, S. Renee Smith.
Is she from Delaware?
Yes.
She had a great perspective on data, so I really wanted to talk about her viewpoint and expand upon it because she aligns a lot with what we're talking about.
Yeah, and they talked about the downturn in 2020 and then also the economic downturn and then the undeniable racial disparities that we're seeing now. Mm-hmm. And that alone, she says, has created a greater appetite for data.
Yeah, so racial disparities, if we already look at a system that's fragile and it's not, built with an egalitarian mindset, when you introduce a systemic problem,
right,
it's only going to make things worse. The system's already fragile, so you break it down even further, and that causes people to be isolated. And so what this Renee, right?
Yeah, Renee.
What Renee is talking about is that when she looks at that data, she looks at it as like, they're not numbers. This is people on the other end that are generating this information. So we have to take that sort of the humanistic feel, right? That you have to open up our perspective that when you analyze big data, you're analyzing people, not just numbers.
Right.
And it's a very important thing to understand.
Yeah, that's what she said. She says, as an expert in developing leaders, numbers don't mean much to me unless there's a clear connection to the people they represent.
That's precisely correct. So when she goes and she delivers a message to a leader through some sort of business intelligence to say, look at this data we have, it's not only that, it's like, look at what these people are saying.
Yes.
That small change, even though data is the fundamental base of all of it, that small change alters the perspective on how we actually appreciate that data that we're receiving and the answers it gives us.
Yeah, because she's talking about work, in and of itself, which we've done an episode on that where we talked about work. But whenever she said you understand problems such as inequity, power dynamics, workplace cultures that oppress and traumatize individuals and groups of people, as well as how these issues disrupt families, communities, and business growth.
Yeah.
So helping these business leaders understand, find, and implement solutions to these challenges, she's recognizing that data is central to her work.
Yeah, I think data is going to be helpful from an agnostic format for showing the systemic effects of a business and the choices made within a business and the products and services affecting those people. At first I was like, great, made the product, made the money, I don't have to think about it anymore. What is it beyond that? How is it really being used?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, great, the internet's out there, but then you also have Silk Road and people are selling a bunch of heroin on it.
Right.
You got to look at beyond the product, whatever it might be, heroin or to a toy doll, whatever it is.
Right.
How is it actually getting used by the
end consumer? Our heroin being smuggled into toy dolls.
Into toy dolls, you know what I mean? So there's a disparity there in perspective. And this is shown with a really cool statistic that said 68% of the leaders think that they're doing the right thing. So this is kind of a funny comment. You're a leader and you think you're doing the right thing. How are you so unsure that what you're doing is correct? That it is helpful, unifying. It is something that helps people evolve, right? How do you have to, I think it's correct. How are you so unsure if something is just the right thing to do? Does it harm people?
It's also, like looking at data as a revenue source compared to looking at data as helping humanity.
Yeah, and that's what they've been looking at. They've been looking at it as a revenue source. So for them to change that perspective is interesting. But human beings that support their systems, what was it, 15%?
Yes.
15% of people look at those companies and say they're doing the right thing. 85% of the population of people that interact with these businesses and services feel that these people are crooks.
Yeah, and she said 68% of business leaders think they're doing the right thing.
That's what I'm saying. 68%.
The disparity.
They think they're doing the right thing, but then people who support these companies say that, hey, we don't feel you're doing the right thing, but there's no communication.
No.
There's no proactive dialogue. There's a lack of data collection and understanding from those people. These companies take their own data and a little bit of data from the supply chain and assume everything's going well. And hopefully they get a Google review and maybe they'll answer it real quick. But they don't understand truly the systemic effects that are happening here. So when she talks about humanizing data and showing systemic effects of it, that can help with those racial disparities.
Yeah, and understanding that the data that you're taking in, that there's a responsibility to it.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. You have to be responsible to those people and what
Right.
they are creating. You know, there's value in their thoughts and their interactions. And you need to value that properly rather than saying, great, look at all this stuff we collected.
Yeah, she said this: when executives leave the comfort of their corner offices and have conversations with real people, those experiences influence and reframe the meaning of data.
That's correct. They're so isolated in their own perspective. You have to open that up. And so when they can have conversations with all the people that interact with their product or service or don't interact with it, that's going to change and reframe how they're going to operate as leaders.
Yeah, and she mentioned a study. She served on the Delaware Commission on Early Education in the Economy. And she said there was members of the commission, and she was more than 20 business leaders, and she was talking about high quality early learning programs of the state, especially for at-risk learners, how beneficial that was early on.
Yeah.
And then how people were the data showed that, but then people were just denying it.
Yeah, for those at-risk learners, they found that if they could foster that creativity and that learning
Right.
sooner, it would keep them in school longer.
Right.
It would actually increase their outcomes later on down the road. But other people are like, no. But the data specifically showed that. And then she, helped get together that $9 million grant that actually went towards those early stage learners, those people that were at risk.
Yeah, it's also a short-term mentality versus a long-term mentality.
That's correct. I'll take the apple today rather than 2 apples tomorrow.
Right.
It's an old philosophical problem.
So I would, to save money from the state, we'd rather not have these early adoptions because we're judged on our budgets instead of judged on how many children have gone through the system completely and came out and graduated.
Even though the data is showing that within your J curve, it's going to hurt for a second,
Right.
but you're going to have exponential benefits later.
Yes.
That's what it is.
But I mean, what does the average CEO last 8 years? Other C-suites last 4 years. So that's max what they're looking at.
Well, hopefully I can last longer than that. I'm quite young. You know
CMOs are 4.
Yeah, dude,
I'm done in 4 years.
You're a burnout, dude. You're totally
I got
burnout.
4 years.
That's it. I got 4 good years out of you and you're a lifeless piece of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just a limp sucking stump.
Yeah, that's all you
just
are.
sitting on the couch, digging into the cushions.
You're pulling the life out of this company. You know what I mean? Your sweatpants,
we need to have
sweatpants don't even have pockets anymore.
Yeah, we need to have a conversation. No, well, CMOs too, if they want to go, because usually what happens is the CEO, you could get this. This makes a lot of sense. So if we're all about shareholder value, and so CEO's been in 4 years, then they're like, well, let's try a new marketing shift. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I've worked with this guy for 4 years. Let's try a new way to market, and then they try another thing and then that doesn't work. So 8 years they're out.
Yeah, that's what they do. They just run them in cycles like it's a political thing.
Yeah. And then these CMOs just bounce from company to company to company.
If you're doing something of true value, if you're looking at it like it's actual human beings on the other end,
right?
It's not a 4 or 8 year thing. This is a lifetime thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can you not feel that great purpose?
Yeah, I listen. I think he recently retired, but the CEO is an Australian guy. He took over WD-40. Now, the lubricant. Yeah.
That stuff's amazing.
And the stock went up like 10 times. And I think he'd been there for like 15 years or something like that, maybe recently. But right when he got there, he said, okay, he said, the biggest problem is we don't have the right culture and that people are first. And I need to implement this with the leaders. So you can go on WD-40's website, and if you click around, it's really cool, and they put all their culture, and they have everything. Then he said, number 2, the product's not out in the whole world. People will use this product everywhere.
Benefit. It's used for so many things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the most ridiculous lubricant around.
Yeah, I think it was originally used just for like rockets and stuff like that. That's where it was invented at, when we were doing our whole
space race thing.
Yeah, all that, in 1940s, inventing rockets and stuff.
But, even before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, the can's cool. It's like an old school looking can.
It's got a good look.
Yeah.
Now they got the lever thing that keeps it on there permanently. You don't have to stick the red thing.
Yeah, but why would somebody not in India with their motorcycle want it just as much as somebody in the United States?
Anything that has ball bearings or metal on metal, which is a majority of all transportation here on Earth, requires lubricants.
Yes, exactly. But he decided to put people first, and profits rose.
Of course,
amazing.
When you start to value people properly, other systemic effects happen from it, right? The focus was on people. And when you start looking at data and having the focus that data is people, great positive benefits are going to come from that.
Yeah, and I want to hit, she had 3 points on the experience that taught her that humanizing data can impact us in the following ways.
Is this lady ripping off us?
Yeah, she is.
Might be. Good for her, though.
So number one was increased empathy. Every person has a story.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to those stories increase connection. We're able to see ourselves in others and build capacity for compassion. Most importantly, it builds credibility because your employees will know that they matter to you.
Yeah, that's correct. So even from an HR standpoint, if you can collect everything and if you analyze everybody's story at once, wow. Think about the power in analyzing all those stories. What's the common thread between everything? Mm-hmm. You'll be able to see that through everyone's nuances.
Yeah, and then second was engage listeners. As a leader, is like you know that there's a problem, but may have difficulty impacting how the issue impacts a person or a group of people. This creates disconnects. By talking with people and gathering stories, you engage on deeper levels and develop an understanding of the issue and how to communicate it from your heart.
Yeah, because stories connect with people at the deepest level.
It's an evolutionary process.
They understood it. Yeah, it's completely evolutionary. They understood it in biblical times, and we've just chosen to forget it now.
Right.
Hollywood hasn't forgotten it. The best films take on the hero's journey.
Right.
But what they had to do to figure that out, you know how that works? Just to take a spin here on Hollywood. Hollywood, there was two guys that developed an algorithm. And what they did is they took a whole bunch of data in with all the top films. And they're like, what is it about these films that work? And it's the fact that they take on this thing called the hero's journey. So they use huge amounts of data, analyze it, and realize that the hero's journey is the thing that sells on films. So now they have a machine where they can intake script. So when someone writes a script and like, is this going to be a good script? All they got to do is put it into the machine, and the algorithm processes all this data to see if it actually works into the hero's journey model. If it does, invest in it. If it doesn't, don't do it. But it's taken so much information over time about what really works, and it's at the human level. So if you want your company to be the next blockbuster, international blockbuster, you got to look at things at the emotional human level.
Right.
And if you want to use data to supercharge that, well, you go to tartle.co to supercharge that sort of data set.
Yeah, and she said inspire a mission is the last one. When I was asked to serve on the board, she's talking about that one board, the data was convincing, but she said seeing those children and talking to the instructors transformed the data into clear stories that moved me to speak to the state legislature education committees.
Yeah, so you can have all the data you want, right? But then if you go to those actual people within that culture, whatever it might be, you're like, wow, this is where the data is coming from, and this is how it's actually living its life. The perspective has now become a full-body picture.
Yeah, and she said, I knew every child deserved an equal education that would more likely lead to a better quality of life. And I was determined to help them get it. Yeah. Because she was emotionally involved.
Yeah, you become emotionally involved at that point with logic.
Right.
That's so cool. Data helps keep the logic in place, and then you can still emotionally connect. What an interesting way of viewing things. It's not just about making the money, but it's also emotionally connecting with what's going on.
Yeah, the data allows you to know who you can speak your story to.
Yes.
And how to speak the story.
Yeah, and how to speak it. And it's not to coerce them. It's just to understand that, I should be doing as the Romans do.
Right.
Otherwise, the information and the value of what I'm trying to preach is not being received properly.
Right. And so Tartle's story.
What is Tartle's story? We're the Sherpa.
Right.
Okay? We understand the collective power and value in all of our data coming together to solve problems. That's what the world is, right? If I want to understand consumption behaviors to help, prevent climate change as best I can, I do that by analyzing everything and everyone. Truthful information, understanding how they emotionally connect with their own lives and their own behaviors. So if I can understand that, then I can understand with that data what decisions we need to make, especially people in an authoritative position to actually go make larger systemic changes. But you have to listen to those people. You have to listen to their consciousness, and their consciousness is the data. It's those thoughts. It's things they do that create their world. And through their perspective defines how life and all of us interact in all of our societies. And so when we look at Tartle, we're a Sherpa in this process. We want to champion people on their data journeys. They are data champions, right? So we want to help them, give them the tool and the power and the education so that they can help come together and emotionally connect with causes that they care about. Because when we emotionally connect, we invest our time and our energy into it. And if you, as a user on the Tartle Marketplace, can receive compensation for your sharing, come on, it's a win-win. You're economically incentivizing the world and solving problems at the same time with the collective power of all of our data. Are you kidding me? You tell me you find a better model for solving issues than that.
There isn't one.
There isn't one. Agriculture, political research, healthcare, tourism, it doesn't matter. You name it. It's all there. I don't want a farmer planting crops that people aren't going to buy on the shelf.
black defense budgets.
Yeah, black budget. Yeah, black budget defense things, you know. Can we stop spending money on it? The people don't want it. We don't need to keep building nukes, you know.
We don't need a nuclear drone.
We don't need a nuclear drone. We don't need a new SR-71 Blackbird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we need more trees.
Lasers are cool though. Let's invest in lasers. You know what I mean?
The green ones, the red ones.
Guy goes into the Pentagon. He's like, listen, I got a really cool thing. What if I could freeze a whole city block?
Have you seen the lasers that go on firearms that only you can see if you have a special glasses on, and that
it's
no
in a
one else
spectrum?
can see? Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, it's really cool.
Because you don't want the guy on the other side to see the red dot on. And be
Yeah.
like, that's not good.
Yeah,
You know?
let me run.
Yeah, that's not
funny.
positive.
Speaking of running, let's go.
Yeah, see ya.
Thank you for listening to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path. What's your data worth?
We should eat some.